Okay, somehow. How are you? Yes. And Cassandra is okay. Yeah. She was more injured than the dog. Yeah. We had a hero dog and a hero human. Yeah.
Good morning. Good to see everybody today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Augusta, where we aspire to create a beloved community guided by principles of compassion, reason, respect, and justice. Here in the CSRA, we reside on the lands of the Westo people, the Savannah Shawnees, and the Yuchi peoples of the Muskogee Confederacy. My name is Cheryl Martin. I am your worship host, and I will be co-creating this service with Reverend Nic, Chris Garcia, my fellow worship host, Josef Patchen, our wonderful music director, and our choir, the tech deck, and their amazing, the talented tech deck, and all of you, whether you're attending in person or virtually. For those of you who have a printed order of service, I encourage you to review the back page. I am having an issue with, okay, somebody wore the wrong glasses today, so. Okay. I encourage you to review the back page of your order of service, which has several important upcoming events. If you would like to be included on an email list to stay informed about our programs, please fill out a blue card that's in the seat pocket near you. We got the page turn. As we prepare to fully enter into this time of worship, would you please read our church covenant with me aloud? We covenant to serve our nation within, among, and on us, love and affirm each other and our planet, celebrate multicultural, interdependent wholeness, live embodying our values through practice and play, expand our awareness of power and privilege, centering those most burdened by injustice. Embrace mutual accountability for our impact, making amends and returning to love. Seek truth and understanding, exploring with curiosity, reason, and wonder. Support each other's spiritual development, encouraging faith and transformation. May this living, relational, and sacred promise offer meaning, liberation, and joy. May we create beloved community.
Good morning. Our chalice lighting this morning is a poem by Reverend Dr. Rebecca A. Savage. It's called Welcome Mystery. As people of faith and wonder, we welcome in the delight of mystery, the awe of unfolding adventures, the expansiveness of what it means to behold mystery as a gift to the imagination. Too often we relax into routines, find comfort in old habits, and give in to the confines of our lives. In this time of worship together, may our hearts be nudged open to what may be. May our spirits be wrapped in curiosity to seek mystery and to welcome her in. May our time together this day remind us to stay open, stay inquisitive of what we do not yet understand, and be inspired to stretch ourselves into new ways of being. Welcome mystery, welcome into our hearts and into our time of worship together.
Speaking of mystery, our first hymn this morning deals directly with this. Hymn number 389, and the words will be on the screen as usual. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. As we sing this hymn together, we'll sing it first, it's a round, so we'll sing it first in unison 2 times, and then we'll do it as a round, starting with the choir, and then I'll invite each of the sections in. So choir section 1, section 2, and the center will be along with this side over here. So three sections, and we'll just go until it feels like we should stop. Rise in body or spirit. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in
This is a time in our service when we gather as a community to share those joys and sorrows that have come into our lives over this last week. Thank you.
As we enter into a shared moment of silent prayer and reflective meditation, I invite you to relax, gaze out the windows maybe, the leaves blowing slightly in the wind, or close your eyes if that's more comfortable for you, and bring one of your big questions that you wrestle with to mind. And the kids should be staying for the whole service this morning. Questions such as, why'd the kids leave just now? Or, is there a God? Why do we exist at all? Whatever transcending mystery that occupies your thoughts when given a bit of time and space. And we'll sit together in silence for a moment of contemplation, letting the enormity of the mystery wash over us.
Now is the time in our service where we take up the offering, which will help us sustain this community, where we can explore the transcendent mystery and support each other in creating beloved community. That being said, will our ushers please come forward?
The youth are supposed to be doing this morning.
Joseph. Thank you, choir. And thank you all for your generosity.
There are so many questions that rest on our hearts and our minds that we can potentially never know at least the full answer to, if not nothing really about it. That doesn't prevent us from trying, for searching, for trying to connect to a larger understanding of the world. And yet there are so many questions that we still get to play with, both in our minds and in relationship. That's what Chris and I are going to wrestle with today, are some of these questions and how they can impact our lives, especially as you use. And so the first question I have, Chris, for you is, what did you reflect on? What question did you reflect on during our time for meditation today?
Wow. I have a lot of questions about the world, and it gets harder as I get older. The questions just get harder. The first thing that really came to my mind when we were meditating, because I was looking out the window and I was thinking about plants, and people who know me know that I have a big fascination with carnivorous plants. And the reason for that is because I have a bigger fascination with consciousness. And carnivorous plants are the most intentional of the different plant species that I've seen out there. You have pitcher plants from all over the world. I have a lot of them. And they are, I know materialists don't like to hear the word design, but there's something very intentional about the way they can trap an insect that can only go in and cannot come out. And most famously, the Venus flytrap. Charles Darwin wrote many essays about the Venus flytrap. He couldn't figure that out either. A Venus flytrap, it has no brain, it has no nervous system, it doesn't have any sense organs that parallel ours, it's not capable of mobility. It has a problem. It has a technical problem in that it wants to grow in soil that has very little nitrogen or nutrients because there's no competition there. Where does it get nitrogen? Somehow, it comes across the idea that insects have nitrogen. Does it think that way? We don't know. But flytrap uses geometry, it uses hydrodynamics, it uses electricity to spring leaves together with spines that interlock and trap. It finds that there's something in the trap by using a motion detector. It has a motion detector made out of plant material. A flytrap has a short-term memory. It can count to 3, which is pretty good for a plant. And it knows that somehow what it is trying to catch is capable of motion. I don't understand that. And people who know about plants don't understand that either.
It's very similar to what I was thinking about. How do certain plant or animal species know how to do a thing? For example, there are migratory birds who travel 20,000 miles within any given year, from, say, North America to South America, without any compass, without any guide, except for something internal inside of them. And that has always fascinated me. And there are probably some scientific explanations for it, and it's still going to marvel me. Even though there's an explanation for it, there's still how do we get there? Yeah. And that to me is a fun thing to think about. That always helps me to kind of see and appreciate the mystery in the universe. And the other thing that I was thinking about for this specific meditation was, we as UUs have in our tradition some ambiguity of between the importance of experience, of personal experience and reverence, and reason, and how those two things kind of overlap and sometimes conflict and push and pull against each other. And but both, nonetheless, are integral to being a Unitarian Universalist. Our first source, for example, whether it be in the currently named sources or the potential update to them, names personal experience as a super important way that we can connect to that which is bigger than us. And Chris, I think you said something really brilliant the other day about how science can explain quantity.
You talk about experience, and experience is kind of the problem, because like I say, it goes back to consciousness. Matter does not experience as far as we know, but we do. And apparently plants have a behavior that experiences, and migratory birds that travel from one continent to another, or salmon swimming upstream to be where they were born. Why do they work that hard? You know, the problem you have is that, going back to Galileo, science, modern science kind of begins with Galileo, back when the church could be very dangerous and hostile to people who went against doctrines. So from the very beginning of science, it was necessary to measure quantity, but not to measure quality. The quantity has the ability to stay put. If it weighs something, it continues to weigh that. It doesn't morph, it doesn't change. You can measure gravity, you can measure the motion of a planet. A scientist can explain to you what a lemon is, but it can't give you the experience of a lemon. So when you're talking about why, you're talking about quality. And when you're talking about consciousness, you're talking about equality. And science, as we have it until now, has not been able to measure those. But now, with quantum physics and other things, science is being pushed up against its own boundaries. Now it has to go beyond quantity to try to explain why matter at a very fine level behaves in ways that don't make any sense on a higher level.
You asked the question the other day that I really appreciate and kind of makes me chuckle, is that we can explain life with science, but do we really want to?
Do we really want to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a yes or no answer to that. I think like we sometimes just have to experience the thing for the thing.
I think the really great scientists, you had people like Carl Sagan or Einstein, the famous ones and the not so famous ones. They loved the fact that there were questions that were out of their reach, and that we didn't even have the mental tools to answer, you know? They were the ones who liked to push their own boundaries, you know? You and I are going to the gym, right? And we had trainers. And one of the lessons that I've learned in the gym is the value of failure, see? My trainer pushes me to lift weights and do this and that, but you don't really make progress until you reach that point where you can't lift it one more time and you start to fall apart. That's what they call failure. But
And that point sucks.
that point sucks.
Yeah.
But if you're a scientist, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
And
what you want.
honestly, if you're working out, it's great too.
It's great. It doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
Especially if there's girls around. You know?
Yeah. Or guys.
Or guys.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, Reverend Sarah Richards wrote a sermon called Transcending Mystery, a lot of which has inspired our conversation today. And she came up with a really interesting idea, a phrase that you really locked onto in terms of how to explain our relationship with the mystery of not knowing. What was that phrase?
Emergent theory.
I think that we'll talk about that in a little bit, but
Okay.
this one is the
Mystery.
covenant with mystery.
The covenant of mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you could even call it the covenant with failure.
Yes.
Yeah,
You know,
either way.
you push it until it doesn't make any more sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we get to know something new, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's where the fun stuff starts.
Something new and transformative.
Here there be dragons, yeah.
And the way that I kind of take this idea of being in covenant with mystery is that we kind of have an understanding with mystery that sometimes we're just going to have to be at odds. That we're not going to necessarily ever get to a point where I will fully understand this thing,
Yeah.
and yet I'm still in relationship with it.
Yeah.
And being okay with the resulting ambiguity. Dr. Reverend Sarah Richards says, that seeming contradiction really resonates because it demonstrates the interconnection between our human drive to understand, to come to the end of a story and the experience of mystery, the understanding that there will never be answers to all of our questions. Ursula Goodenough, who I think many of us know, famous religious naturalist who will actually be visiting us to give a reflection in April. She sums it up a little bit differently, noting our uniquely human capacity to, quote, analyze reality, to ask questions that yield answers that generate new questions. All of us, that is, are scientists. Mm-hmm. Even as very young children, we construct hypotheses and test them out. We are also uniquely religious. We need answers to existential questions. We need to believe in things, to structure and orient our lives in ways that make sense and offer hope, to identify values and ideals, to transcend and interconnect. To transcend and interconnect. And that, I think that once again, the mystery of being in both of these kinds of human needy places all at once. And we like resolutions in mystery stories because we so often don't get resolutions in life. We are often left with not quite knowing the end of the story. And Chris and I both are nerds, and so we love Marvel, and we love the MCU, and this happens a lot in the MCU. Yeah. I think we were talking a lot about the character Loki, who you waxed poetic about the other day.
There's a thing I think where writers, if they have a really good character, you kill them off. But if everybody wants them to come back, you bring them back. You know,
you figure out a way.
You find
even
a
if
way.
It doesn't quite make sense.
Walking Dead. You know, yeah. They never really die. They just find another way to come back.
And Loki is the epitome of this in both the comics and the MCU. He just keeps dying. He just keeps coming back. And there's, for example, Loki, well,
you think about why is he interested?
Yeah.
Because we like a guy who breaks all the rules, you know? In Indian lore, Indian folk stories, it's always Coyote. Coyote is the Loki in Indian folklore because he breaks all the rules. Now, Loki can be murderous. He kills people, but
he's got a kind of good, kind of bad, which is also a mystery sometimes. Like how can one be both good and bad? Yeah. And we kind of all are that. It's kind of how we behave with that matters. But Janae and I really desire to play with mystery. And yet, when it comes to stories, like Dr. Richards says, I desperately want to know how everything makes sense in a story. Mm-hmm. For example, Janae and I were just watching this show on Netflix recently called Bodies. Has anyone seen that show? It's a science fiction show, deals with time travel, but it's super complex, and I found myself throughout, like in the first couple episodes, being like, that detail doesn't make sense. How can that detail, like they have to go back to it. They have to go back. They have to figure it out. And by the end, they do eventually wrap around and find. And I feel so satisfied. Yeah. And yet, the important bit is that there's mystery throughout also. And so again, just like that connection. And you talked a little bit now about scientists and how they have dealt with this topic throughout history.
Yeah, you have science fiction. You know, there's basically two kinds of science fiction. There's what's called hard science fiction and soft science fiction. A guy like Michael Crichton, Jurassic Park, and other books, he would be called hard science fiction. It's not enough to have a dinosaur You have to be able to explain in a scientifically valid way of how you did that. He had a book on time travel, and he had to find a scientific way of explaining time travel. That's hard science fiction. Soft science fiction would be somebody like Ray Bradbury or maybe Octavia Butler, who doesn't really care how the time machine works. They want to get to the good stuff. They want to get to how this affects people. So that's soft science fiction. But science fiction is a way that is kind of like the way that scientists dream, right? Stephen King once said that movies are how a nation dreams. And if you want to know what a nation was thinking about, you look at the popular culture of that time. Marvel Universe, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, the Hulk, a lot of these guys were invented in the early 1960s when nuclear war was a big fear. And these are all heroes who got their power through nuclear accidents. See? You have Jules Verne, he invents a submarine. He doesn't really tell you much about how the submarine works, except it's with the power of the sun. And now we have submarines up there. If you read Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, the things that he says about books, the things that he says about politics, those are the things that are true now. He even predicted earbuds, the little earphones. People are wearing those on the train in Fahrenheit 451. It's all there. And then you see the inventions come about. But notably, I have never found a scientist or a science fiction book or story previous to the 60s that predicted the internet. I have not found a science fiction story that predicted computers. So no matter how much they try to predict the future, there's always something major that slips under the wire.
Going back to my example of Loki, there's an episode in the second season called Science/Fiction. And they have these greatest minds in this Marvel universe, this one universe of the multiverse, who can't quite figure out why this thing is happening. And at the end, they just relax into it and say, you know what, sometimes we just have to be okay with the fiction of it. And
soft science fiction.
Right, well, we don't have an answer, but it's happening. Yeah. So we have to move on with life regardless. We can't get stuck because of it. And that brings us, I think, a little bit into how this all matters to us. How does this matter to the way that we interact with the world, the way that the world changes because of our transformation? And I think you asked a great question again the other day. Why do we care?
Why do we care?
Is a great mystery even in itself.
Yeah.
Like, why does it matter to us that the world improve in some kind of way, that there is more justice, that there is less suffering? And I think what's really important again is that if we don't know all the answers, that can't stop us from starting to do the work. You can continue to learn as you go. In fact, sometimes, and perhaps even often, you don't learn until you do the thing anyway, until you start doing the thing, and then the why becomes a little more apparent.
That's right. People, especially good scientists, you just have to be ready to say yes. That was one of the things I told my son when he was growing up. I said, if something lands in front of you, just say yes, and you'll figure it out later. That is one of the best things in your spiritual practice, if you can, is to just learn to have faith, not so much in the supernatural, but that whatever happens, if you just step into it and find out where the problem is, you'll figure it out.
Unless, of course, that yes will cause more harm, which is anher mystery.
But you won't find out.
You have to make what?
Yeah, you got to find out.
It depends. Yeah. Depends.
Oppenheimer, yeah.
I don't know if I'd use him as the best example, but yeah. I don't know if he would use him as the best example.
He had second thoughts when it was too late.
Yeah, right.
And that happens a lot.
But I think where these reflections and these conversations and the work that happens out of them really is magnified, is amplified, becomes important is when we start doing it in community.
Yes.
Because we start to empathize more with other people, And the mystery of other people begins to unravel at least a little bit. I know that other people are always going to be a complete mystery to us. We can know a little bit about them, but it's more likely that we can feel with them, that we can experience something similar, and that's how we really get connection. That's empathy, right? It doesn't stop us from trying to understand, because that's part of what real empathy is. Again, we still have to be okay with not knowing the full story, because it can be invasive. Even somebody as close as Janae and I are, like, there are things that she and I will hold private to ourselves, because that's a story that we get to have with ourselves. And yet, we do it together. We live these stories together. I want to end by going once more to Loki, because he's on the top of my mind. We just finished season 2, and there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
And the way that he kind of resolves a problem at the end, I'm going to try my best not to give spoilers.
Jeff have Disney Channel. If you don't have Disney Channel,
I'm gonna do my best not to spoil.
Disney Channel.
Loki has to make a sacrifice at the end, but the sacrifice doesn't really kill him per se. He just adds connection to the world in a beautiful way, through a beautiful symbol that kind of pervades all cultures, all religions, the tree of life, and uses this as a way to end up saving all life in every universe within the multiverse, without ever really losing connection, because then he can still be a part of other people's lives throughout. So this is a mysterious symbol. It doesn't really quite make sense. We can't quantify this. But going back to your example of the trees,
trees.
and your carnivorous plants, there's something beautiful about making the sense of this life through the imagery of nature, and the way that it really does connect us in a beautiful and holistic way. And I think we're gonna finish up there. Do you have any closing words you wanna share?
You mentioned about trees, it's a mystery. How does an oak tree contained in an acorn? Jesus said you have to die to yourself to be, enter the kingdom of heaven. An acorn has to give up being an acorn if it wants to be an oak tree. There's a part of you that if you want to transform, you have to be willing to die to what you were to become what you want to become. When I came in here this morning, you had something up on the screens with a chalice and a picture of a nebula, the cosmic nebula.
Can you throw that up, Daniel?
Yeah, you put that up. This would be my last diversion here. But look at the dark stuff. See, that's dust. That's a lot of dust. I mean, those sparkly things inside of them are stars being born. How small is the earth compared to any one of those stars? And look how tiny they are compared to the dust. And that's you. You are that. The acorns laying around that tree, most of them will never become a tree, but one of them dies to itself and becomes a tree.
Something else from nothing but.
Something but.
That's my favorite thing that Dr. Goodenough says. Something else from nothing but. And that's how all life has emerged for all time.
If that isn't a mystery, what is?
Right.
Yeah.
One final nerdy mystery. I made that with AI, that image with the chalice in the middle of the cosmos. And one mystery for me is, will AI kill us? But we'll talk about that another day. May it be so, blessed be.
All right.
Would you rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 92, Mysterious Presence, Source of All.
will continue this discussion in our different cohorts of faith formation, and at about 12:15, adults will be meeting in here. We'll talk a little bit about how these subjects have been an important part of Unitarian Universalism since the beginning. I'm gonna have you wrap around a little bit so that everyone can see you. But we're gonna finish this morning with a benediction by the amazing words of Unitarian adjacent. I don't know if Mary Oliver would call herself Unitarian, but she was definitely in the mix.
Yes.
And she says in her poem, Mysteries, Yes. Truly, we live with mysteries too marvelous to be understood.
How grass can be nourishing in the mouths of lambs.
How rivers and stones are forever in allegiance with gravity, while we ourselves dream of rising.
How two hands touch and the bonds will never be broken.
How people come from delight or the scars of damage to the comfort of a poem.
Let us keep our distance always from those who think they have the answers.
Let us keep company always with those who say, look, and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads. Blessed be.